Hey guys, it's Noah with American Trucks, and what I have here in front of me is the Roush cold air intake for the 19 and newer Ranger. Now this intake is perfect for the Ranger owner who's looking for a top tier performance upgrade that doesn't stray too terribly far from stock. The main goal with a cold air intake is deleting all the restrictions factory intake tubes come with. Now Roush's cold air intake flows more air than the factory one, which will increase the throttle response as well as horsepower and torque. Without any restrictions, silencers, or baffles, air is free to move into your engine faster, resulting in a happier motor and an overall more enjoyable driving experience. Now the included airbox top works as a nice shield and a nice barrier to cover the filter and intake inlet from the heat and the elements. Now the filter included is oiled, or it can be run dry, so right out of the box you're protected from smaller particulates floating around the engine bay. Now this filter is also reusable, so when this guy gets dirty, you can just wash it and put it right back on. Now it also has 21% more surface area than the stock filter, which is going to give you some improved filtration efficiency. The intake is constructed from injection molded heavy duty black plastic. It's lightweight, it's cheaper to buy than something constructed from metal, and it's sturdy enough to resist cracking or warping because of engine bay heat. Now plastic is also known to dissipate heat faster than metal, so this should help keep those intake air temperatures down and prevent heat soak, which is especially important on a performance-oriented build. And then lastly, the filter itself is backed by a 90-day warranty, so you're protected from any manufacturing defects. So let's talk price. Roush's cold air intake comes in right around the $450 mark. Now that puts it towards the top of the price range, but not super far away from the price of most intakes available on the site. Automotive grade plastic is a cheaper option than an aluminum intake, but it will be just fine under the hood, and again, it's gonna help keep those intake temps down. Now considering the Roush name and the quality you get for the price, I'd say that this is a very solid option when you're shopping for intakes for your truck. So the install is gonna fall at 1 out of 3 wrenches of difficulty. It's gonna be an easy job for just about anybody, and you can count on spending about an hour on it all. All the parts you need for the install are included in the kit, like the boots, the clamps, any kind of fittings like that. This is a simple bolt-on job. It doesn't require any fabrication or tuning. Now without further ado, here's an actual AT customer who took the time to show you how to do it.
Okay, I'll go over the tools that I used in the installation of the cold air intake. We used a ratchet. I used a quarter drive. You can use whichever ratchet you have. I used a 7mm socket to take off the OEM parts. I used an 8mm socket to put on the Roush parts. I did use an extension. I happen to have a wobble extension, but that's not required. Any extension will work to help you get at some of the bolts that you need to get at. I used a pair of scissors to cut the seal. Once I had that laid out, I cut the excess off. Used a trim removal tool to remove the coolant line, and I used a screwdriver to help me break the tape on the cold air sensor, as well as take off the yellow PVC sensor. Hello, my name is Adam. Today we're going to be installing a cold air intake for a 2019 and up Ford Ranger with the 2.3 liter EcoBoost. I have a 2021 Ford Ranger Lariat Tremor that we'll be installing this on. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with the OEM airbox removal. There's a few things that we got to do. We got to remove the air temperature sensor, got to remove the PVC fitting. There's a hose clamp at the top and a hose clamp all the way at the bottom. There's an coolant sensor. We just got to remove this with a trim tool here. And then there's the 3 clips in the back, and we should be able to get all this out. So first we'll start with the sensors. On the air temperature sensor, there's a little piece of tape on this one. If you just break that tape, you can peel this back, and then there's just a push in on the sensor connector and pull back, and we get that released. On the PVC sensor, or the PVC tube here, we want to pull this little lever up, and then we can get this out. I'm using a screwdriver. It's a little easier on the fingers. You don't have to. Just want to make sure you don't pry too hard and break anything. It should be pretty smooth. And then we'll go ahead and pull this off. Okay, now that we have those removed, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and loosen these hose clamps. First, we'll start at the top one. That's just a 7mm socket. Okay, once we get that good and loose, we'll move to the bottom one here. And again, just a 7mm socket. And we'll just get that in there. I find a normal well socket works instead of a deep well better for this. So I'll go ahead and get that loose. Okay, that's good and loose. So next thing we'll do here quickly is just remove this coolant line with the trim tool. There's just a little clip here. Get under it, pry it up there. And we'll get this off the box so it's not in our way. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, we'll go ahead and remove the clean air tube on this one. Kind of work this loose. Don't want to put too much pressure on it, and we want to be cognizant of other things in the area so we don't knock something around. While I'm taking this apart here, I notice there's one more piece we have to get off here, which is this coolant line. Go ahead and use the trim tool on that again and pry that off. So now that's free. All right, now let's work the bottom of this hose off. All right, we got that off, so we'll set this off to the side. And now we'll take the lid of the box off with just removing these 3 clips in the back. They just push forward. Take the box lid off. And you notice these tabs here, so you gotta push it towards the driver's seats of the truck there. Now we have that off, we'll move that out of the way. Remove the filter. And that's it as far as the removal process. So we'll go ahead and get started with putting the new components together and go ahead and get that installed. Okay, before I get started and I take off any parts, I like to make sure that I received everything that I was expecting to receive. So I have the inventory here, and we'll quickly inventory what came in the box. We have the airbox lid, which is here. We have the lid foam seal, which is here. We have the MAF tube, which is here. We have the clean air tube, which is here. We have the air filter, which is here. And then in the hardware kit, we have the 3 bolts to mount the MAF tube. We have the PVC insert, and then we have hose clamps for each side of this, and we have a hose clamp on the filter. So it looks like we have all the parts we need, so now we can go ahead and get started. Okay, the next step is we're going to go ahead and assemble the new air box. And first thing we need to do is on the air box that we removed, we need to take the air temperature sensor out, which you push and twist counterclockwise, and then that just comes out. All right, and now we're ready to install this in the MAF tube. From there, we're just going to put in, and once we get it to work in there, we're going to go ahead and turn that clockwise, which is going to go ahead and lock that in. That's good. Now we're ready to install the MAF tube into the airbox lid. And the key here is that you need the sensor to be up. So we do that and we line up the 3 holes here, and now we're ready to put our bolts in. So one interesting thing here, the directions call for a 10mm socket, but it's actually an 8mm socket. So just note that. I am using an extension, a wobble extension. That's not necessary, that just happens to be what I have. So I'll go ahead and get these 3 started. And when I'm starting them, I like to take it off the wrench, and it makes it a little easier to maneuver in the hand. And this one could be a little tricky. You might have it fall down a couple times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in here. Then I'm going to hold the box up so that the bolt is retained, and then I'll show you what that looks like once I get it in there. Okay, so now I got that getting started in there. And from here, I'm just going to snug these up by hand first. All right. All right, I have all those snugged up by hand now, so I'll just go ahead and put the ratchet on and just give them just a little bit more tight. You definitely don't want to over tighten this. It doesn't take much here to hold this in. Okay. Okay, now that I got that how I want it, I'm going to go ahead and flip this over. And next thing I'm going to do is install the filter. Now, the filter has a hose clamp here. I'm going to go ahead and set that in a position where I can work on it. The filter is going to go in at this angle, with the long part being facing up as I have the box here. So go ahead and work this filter on the MAF tube here. Move the clamp out of the way. One thing you could do, it's a personal preference if you want to, is get this a little more snug before you start so it's not moving around on you. Okay, so now I have the filter all the way, get it a little bit more over here, have that all the way flush on the tube, and I'm ready to tighten the hose clamp here. So these hose clamps are, again, just a 8mm socket, so I'll go ahead and get that tightened. And the main thing that you want to check for with this is that the clamp is over the MAF tube, so it's clamping it together and not just clamping on the tube itself. Move that just a little bit more. All right, now when I'm good with where I want it, I'll go ahead and just snug that up. Again, with all this, you want to make sure that you're not over tightening. It doesn't take a lot of force to get that on there. So we'll just kind of get that in there. Go ahead and just check that. Make sure everything's good and tight there. Okay, that is. Go ahead and inspect it to make sure it's how I want it. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is install the PVC connector and the clean air tube. So this shorter end is the end that goes in the tube here. So let's go ahead and get that worked in. It's going to be a little tight, but you just got to kind of work through it there. All right, almost got it. Just keep working that around till we get it. You can also twist it if you want, which could be easier. Okay, we got that where we want it now, so we're going to go ahead, and the last thing we're going to do is install the hose clamps. We're just going to get those over the fitting so that when we put the hose on, they're there and in place. So the bottom one's just snug enough. This one, as we can tell, is pretty loose, so what we'll go ahead and do here is tighten this up just a little bit so we have less wrenching to do when we're on the truck itself. So we'll go ahead and do that. Again, these are an 8mm socket on these hose clamps. Once we get on the truck, we'll make sure that we position the hose clamp in a way that the end here that's coming out is not interrupting anything. Okay, now we don't want to get this to where it's going to be a problem to slide this over what we're working on, so I think that's good enough for now. It's got a little bit of tension on it there, which is good. It'll keep it from moving around too much. Okay, next step is to install this foam seal around the air box here. So we're just going to peel off the sticky back and we're going to get this started. So I'm going to start at the top here. Doesn't particularly say which way you need to start, and just kind of pulling this back and sticking it down. Now you don't need to cut this, you can just work around the corner as you go. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm just continuing to work this down the edge. And another corner here. And the last corner. Just keep peeling that back as I go. And when I get to the end here where it's touching, I'm going to go ahead and cut this with a pair of scissors. All right, and then I'll just go ahead and make sure that that fits down against that. Go ahead and stick that down. Make sure that I'm got a good stick here. Now this is going to be clamped down on the cover, so not too worried about it coming off, but just make sure I have that. Okay, I have that set. That's looking good, and now I'm ready to move on to installation. Okay, we're ready to go ahead and install the new cold airflow filter here. So what we're going to go ahead and do is get the cover on first. So you got to mind this coolant tube in the back here. You want to kind of get this in and get it under this coolant tube. It's a little bit of a tricky operation because you want to get it fully seated on this side so it sits in nicely. So you just kind of work this coolant tube out of your way here and get this slipped behind it. And we want to make sure that that's fully seated on this side. Okay, and then we're going to put these 3 clips on in the back. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get the clean air tube installed. I'm going to start it on the bottom here first. So I'll just slide that over, work that into position. Kind of helps on the box you're installing it down here if you hold it up with one hand and push down with the other. Make sure I get that where I want it. Let me get it just a little bit further down there. Okay, where I want it. And now what I'll do is go ahead and work this top part on, and then I'll recheck everything before I mess with the hose clamps. Okay, get that going. Keep kind of just shimmying that on, working that on till I get it where I want it here. All right. I got that where I want it, so move back down on the bottom here and make sure that's still everything's good and I got that how I want it. I do. Now I'm going to take my 8mm here and work on my hose clamps. I'm going to loosen this hose clamp a little bit. I want to get it over this lip here. All right, now that I got it just past that lip, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. Again, move the hose clamp where it's easier for you to work on it. And this tail end here is not going to impede anything. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just get that snug down. Again, I'm going to check, make sure everything is how I want it there. And I actually am going to loosen this back up and move this bottom down just a little bit. You know, now anything that you see that you want to make a small fix on, now is the time to do it. So there's nothing wrong with loosening it back up and repositioning a little bit. It's better to do it now and get it how you want it. All right, there we go. I'm a lot more happy about that. So let me go ahead and again snug this back up here. Okay, feeling good about that. That's looking good. Now what I'm going to do is, it's a little easier to get in the bottom here without the extension, so I'm going to remove the extension here and put my socket back on. Again, I'm using my 8mm socket on this. Just going to check again, feeling with my hands to make sure the tube's all the way down where I want it. Pull this up. Okay, this is feeling good on this one. Now there's no lip on this one you got to get under, but you want to get the hose clamp relatively, you want to make sure that it's on the plastic piece you're trying to hold the hose on. I'm just going to loosen this up a little bit so I can get the hose clamp really positioned where I want it here. rotate that down some, loosen it up just a little bit more. All right, there we go. Now I can really move that where I want it. And again, I'm positioning it close to the bottom of the tube, but not to where it's off the tube. And again, it needs to make sure that I'm clamping it to the piece that I'm sliding the tube over, which is the key to what I'm doing here. So now I'm going to tighten this up. And it can be a little difficult at first with a socket when you don't have enough resistance there to make the wrench trip over, and you got to keep taking it off, but just work through it. Stay patient, and you'll get it. All right, now we got some meat on that, so again, I'm just going to go ahead and get this snug. Definitely don't want to overdo it. Almost there. Looks like I'm turning this a lot, but the wrench doesn't move very far in each rotation, so it's really not. Okay, I got that where I want it. Double check this one. I definitely got this one where I want it, so now I'm going to go ahead and connect the PVC tube back. So I'm just going to get this on this tube, push it all the way, and you hear that click. You might not have heard it. It clicks when you push it over. That's engaged. I just push this now. We're locked in there in between, and I have the airflow sensor here, or the cold air sensor, and I'll just go ahead and put this back on with that. That is set where it needs to be. This I removed this earlier for this coolant sensor here. I'm going to go ahead and just push this back in. And if you remember, this was on the back. This doesn't go into anything on this particular tube, but again, as I'm looking at this is hanging out of the way. It's not in danger of contacting anything that I'm particularly worried about, so that's fine. Because I was messing around my coolant tube here, I'll just check that. Do a quick check over everything. Everything looks good.
That was the Roush cold air intake for the 2019 and newer Ranger. Now this intake is available on our site along with tons of other upgrades for your truck. For all things Ranger, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.